The crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow across the elegant ballroom. Tables draped in ivory silk stretched across the polished marble floor, each one adorned with cascading white roses and flickering candles. The soft murmur of conversation mixed with gentle laughter as wedding guests filled the grand space, their formal attire creating a sea of sophisticated colors against the backdrop of luxury. Sarah Mitchell sat at table 12, positioned perfectly to observe the celebration while maintaining a comfortable distance from the dance floor. Her navy blue dress complemented her auburn hair, which she had swept into an elegant updo for the occasion. The fabric draped gracefully over her wheelchair, a sleek modern design that had become as much a part of her as her determined spirit and sharp business mind. As the CEO of Mitchell Technologies, Sarah was accustomed to commanding boardrooms and making decisions that affected thousands of employees. She had built her company from a small startup into a multinational corporation, earning respect and admiration from colleagues and competitors alike. Her success had come through relentless dedication, innovative thinking, and an unwavering belief that obstacles were simply challenges waiting to be overcome. But tonight, surrounded by couples swaying on the dance floor and families gathered around tables sharing stories and laughter, Sarah felt the familiar ache of solitude that success couldn't quite fill. She watched her business partner Rebecca glide across the floor in her flowing white gown, radiant with joy as she danced with her new husband. Sarah smiled genuinely, happy for her friend, but couldn't ignore the hollow feeling that settled in her chest. The accident 3 years ago had changed everything. A late-night drive home from a client meeting, rain-slicked roads, and a moment of distraction had left her paralyzed from the waist down. While she had adapted to her new reality with characteristic determination, rebuilding her life and even expanding her business, the personal side of her world had grown increasingly empty. Dating had become complicated, filled with awkward encounters and well-meaning but misguided pity from potential partners who saw her wheelchair before they saw her. Sarah reached for her champagne glass, taking a small sip as she watched the festivities continue around her. Children ran between tables, their laughter echoing through the ballroom, while elderly couples moved slowly but contentedly across the dance floor. She had almost convinced herself to make an early exit when she noticed a man standing near the edge of the dance floor, looking almost as out of place as she felt. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that showed touches of premature gray at the temples. His black suit fit well but looked slightly uncomfortable, as if he wasn't quite used to formal occasions. Most notably, he was holding the hand of a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She wore a pale pink dress with a full skirt that she kept spinning to watch it twirl, her blonde curls bouncing with each movement. The man looked around the room with a gentle uncertainty, clearly trying to navigate the social dynamics of a wedding while keeping his young daughter entertained. Sarah found herself watching them with growing interest, noting how patient he was as the little girl tugged on his hand, pointing at various decorations and whispering questions that made him smile. When the band announced a slow song dedicated to all the couples in the room, Sarah saw him kneel down to his daughter's level, speaking to her in quiet tones. The child nodded enthusiastically and began scanning the room, her bright eyes moving from table to table as if searching for something specific. Sarah was surprised when those searching eyes landed on her and stayed. The little girl whispered something to her father, who looked up and met Sarah's gaze across the crowded room. For a moment, time seemed to pause as they regarded each other, and Sarah felt an unexpected flutter of nervousness in her stomach. The man said something to his daughter, who nodded again and began walking purposefully toward Sarah's table, her father following close behind with an expression that mixed embarrassment and curiosity. Sarah straightened in her chair, unsure what to expect but intrigued by the approaching pair. "Hi," the little girl said when she reached Sarah's table, her voice clear and confident despite her young age. "My daddy says he's too nervous to ask you himself, but would you like to dance with us? I can teach you the steps I learned in my ballet class." Sarah looked up at the man, who had reached the table and was now standing awkwardly behind his daughter, his cheeks slightly flushed. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice warm despite his obvious embarrassment. Emma has a way of cutting straight to the point. "I'm David, by the way. David Chen. And this is Emma, my daughter and apparently my social coordinator." "I'm Sarah," she replied, charmed by both the directness of the child and the gentle humor in the father's eyes. "And I have to say, Emma, that's very sweet of you, but I'm not sure I'm the best dance partner right now." Emma tilted her head to one side, studying Sarah's wheelchair with the frank curiosity that only children possess. My friend at school has one of those, she said matter-of-factly. She says it goes super fast and she can do tricks with it. Can you do tricks? Emma, David said gently, clearly mortified, but Sarah laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd had all evening. A few, Sarah admitted. But probably not appropriate for a wedding dance floor. That's okay, Emma said, completely unfazed. We can dance sitting down. My grandma does that when her feet hurt. She says dancing is about the music and being happy, not about standing up. Sarah looked at David, who was shaking his head with a mixture of pride and exasperation. She gets that wisdom from her grandmother, he explained. And apparently she's inherited the family trait of not taking no for an answer when it comes to making people feel included. There was something in his voice, a warmth and sincerity that touched Sarah in a way she hadn't expected. She realized that this wasn't pity or charity, it was simply a genuine invitation to join in the celebration. Emma's innocent directness had cut through all the social awkwardness that usually surrounded such moments. Well, Sarah said, looking down at Emma's hopeful face, I suppose I could try sitting down dancing. But I should warn you, I might step on your toes. Emma giggled. You can't step on my toes if you're sitting down, silly. David extended his hand with a shy smile. Would you be my date for this dance? Emma's right, I was too nervous to ask properly. I've been standing over there for 10 minutes trying to work up the courage. Sarah felt her heart skip as she placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and steady, and when he smiled, the expression reached his eyes in a way that made her feel seen rather than pitied. I'd love to, she said, meaning it more than she had expected. Together, they moved to a quiet corner of the dance floor where Sarah could position her wheelchair comfortably. David knelt on one side while Emma stood on the other, both of them taking one of Sarah's hands. As the music played, they swayed gently together, creating their own small circle of movement that felt both intimate and joyful. This is nice, Emma declared, looking around at the other dancers. We look like a family. The innocent observation sent a warm flutter through Sarah's chest, and she caught David's eye over his daughter's head. He looked as moved by his daughter's words as she felt, and she realized that loneliness wasn't something she was experiencing alone tonight. As the song continued, David told her about his work as a pediatric nurse, how he had been raising Emma alone since his wife died 2 years earlier, and how challenging it had been to balance single parenthood with his demanding career. Sarah shared her own story, the accident, the rebuilding of her life, the way success in business had somehow made personal connections more complicated rather than easier. They discovered they lived in the same neighborhood, shopped at the same grocery store, and had probably passed each other dozens of times without meeting. Emma chattered about her ballet classes, her kindergarten teacher, and her goldfish named Sparkles, effortlessly weaving herself into both adults' hearts with her natural charm and unguarded affection. When the song ended, they remained in their small circle for a moment, reluctant to break the spell that had settled over them. Thank you, Sarah said softly, looking at both of them. I was feeling pretty alone tonight, and you've both reminded me what connection really feels like. Thank you for saying yes, David replied. Emma was right, I was nervous. But not because of your wheelchair. I was nervous because you're the most beautiful woman in this room, and I couldn't figure out what someone like you would want with a single dad who spends his evenings helping with kindergarten homework and watching princess movies. Sarah felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, moved by his honesty. Someone like me wants exactly that, she said quietly. I've spent so much time focusing on being strong and independent that I forgot how nice it feels to be part of something bigger. Emma, who had been listening to this exchange with the serious attention children reserve for important adult conversations, suddenly brightened. Does this mean you'll come to my birthday party next week? Daddy said we could have cake and ice cream and watch movies. And I could show you my room and introduce you to Sparkles. Sarah looked at David, who was smiling with a mixture of hope and nervousness. If your dad doesn't mind having a dinner guest who might need a few accommodations, I'd love to come to your birthday party. The only accommodation you need, David said, his voice warm with promise, is a willingness to sit through at least 3 princess movies and listen to detailed explanations of ballet positions. As the evening continued, the three of them remained together, sharing dessert and conversation, watching other guests dance while creating their own quiet celebration at Sarah's table. Sarah realized that she had been looking for connection in all the wrong places, expecting it to come in the form she had known before her accident, when sometimes the most beautiful moments came in entirely unexpected packages. When the wedding began to wind down and guests started saying their goodbyes, David helped Sarah gather her things while Emma carefully carried Sarah's purse, taking her new responsibility very seriously. As they prepared to leave, Sarah felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. "So," David said as they reached the parking area, "I have to ask, was this the strangest way you've ever been asked on a date?" Sarah laughed, the sound carrying clearly in the cool night air. "Definitely. But also the most honest. Emma's got excellent instincts." Emma beamed at the compliment, then surprised both adults by reaching up to hug. "Sarah, good night. I'm glad Daddy asked you to dance," she whispered. "You make him smile the way he used to with Mommy." The simple observation, delivered with childlike honesty, brought tears to both adults' eyes. Sarah hugged the little girl back, feeling a fierce protectiveness and affection that startled her with its intensity. As they said their final goodnights and made plans for Emma's birthday celebration, Sarah realized that sometimes the most important moments in life came not when you were actively searching for them, but when you were simply open to the unexpected kindness of strangers who turned out to be exactly what you needed. Driving home through the quiet streets, Sarah reflected on how the evening had transformed from one of loneliness into one of possibility. She had arrived at the wedding feeling like an observer of other people's happiness, but was leaving with the promise of her own.